Welcome to the Super BS Gamescast, a podcast about video games mostly. It has been a while since we've come at you with some new content, but I promise the wait was worth it.
Super.
BS.
Welcome to the Super BS Gamescast. I am your revered or reviled host, Josh Peterson, and I'm joined here by Colin. Is it Doran or is that right?
It's kind of Doran. I'm not precious, in fairness, so I don't mind either way. I mean, when I was brought up, it was Doran, but people go Duran. Yeah, I'm easy.
All right. I just want to make sure because I got like a Peterson with a D, but everyone always calls it Pedersen, so I know that sometimes people. All right.
Getcha.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. Otherwise known as Colin, the lead singer of 100 Reasons. How you doing, man?
I'm really good, man. I'm chilled out and relaxed. It's the evening where I am, so I'm just just chilled out.
What does the winding down the night look like for you normally?
Well, the wife's taken my little guy up to bed, so I've got the dog on the sofa to the other side of me, just chilling out. And then generally I'll play video games in the evening.
Nice. All right, what are you playing right now?
I got Jedi Fallen Order the other day on
So
PS
good.
Plus. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I've started playing that, and I kind of bounced off it a while back, but because it was like on the PS Plus like this month, I was like, okay, well I'll download it, and then I've started playing. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm getting into it. Yeah.
It's like what in that game, once you get your character beefed up, like it becomes a lot more fun because you stop dying so much.
Yeah, I mean, I play Souls games anyway, so for me, this is kind of fine.
Yeah. Well, so for me, like I know that they've made the games like Star Wars canon now. So like before, I was kind of didn't really care to go back to Star Wars, but now I know they're like tying this into like Obi-Wan and all those shows. So it's kind of like making me consider going back to Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to remember Star Wars back in the day and that kind of thing. So for me, I love Star Wars and I really enjoy it. And there was probably a time when I was a kid when I absolutely loved it, but I'm not one of those uber fanboys. I just didn't. I kind of enjoy it for what it is. I like to just be entertained.
Yeah.
And if it's got good effects and the story's half decent and the acting's decent, I'm going to walk away happy. But I'm not one of those, like the MCU stuff where people pick holes in all of the tiny little things. I can't do that. I haven't got the time.
Yeah. That's I mean, I've got a fourth kid on the way, but like, I was trying to show my daughters, I was trying to show my daughters Star Wars and I fell asleep. Every time we sit down and try to watch them, I'm out. So
yeah, my son's 7 and he's not interested at all. But I'm not going to force it on him either. But I was just like, do you want to watch Star Wars? He's like, no, I don't like it, Dad. I'm like, all right.
Moving on. Well, my kids do like Lord of the Rings, so I guess that's cool. It's a little more exciting than Star Wars. I mean, that might be blasphemy to some people, but
well, I'm just one. I'm easy going. I'm each to their own. I love all the MCU stuff. I love Lord of the Rings. I don't class myself to be. I don't know. I just like good films, and if you're entertained and it's fun, then fine.
that's the whole purpose of movies. Like The Mummy is the perfect movie because it's just a popcorn flick. You can sit back and watch it as many times as you want and be entertained by it.
Agreed entirely. It comes on the TV and it just stays on the TV, because I get you.
Okay, so I got a few questions about music. All right, so like when I saw that you guys had a new album coming out, I was stoked. That was like because I've been trying to I know 2007 was the last album. It's Quick the Word, Sharp the Action, and then I know you guys were doing like some acoustic stuff, right? As Undead Raisins.
Yeah, that was just me and the Andy, and we just wanted to, funnily enough, I like the songs that I've written. So I kind of ended up with a bit of an opportunity to just go and play some shows. And we got our friend Tom to play extra guitar. And it was just really good fun. We did a couple of festivals and a couple of shows, and it was really cool. So it wasn't with it intention of sort of it going anywhere. It was just like, we like each other. Everyone in the band is like good friends. So it was just kind of one of those things that me and the Andy wanted to do and did. So it was
Yeah,
good.
I mean that's awesome. Because I mean, like if you're able to, if you don't get tired of the songs you write, you like the music you're doing, you're able to just like jam with your friends. I mean, that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I make music for self gratification, and
Uh,
I think that's what everybody should do. If you're writing songs or whatever, write for you, because you're the one that's going to potentially be playing them in 25 years' time. And if you can't find something to enjoy about them, then obviously play something else. But
yeah.
I still find something to enjoy, from these songs after all this time, and it's nice, it's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so you did the Undead Raisins, and now you have Glorious Sunset coming out. So what after was like 16 years? So what made you want to put a new album together?
Well, I think the idea was that we were talking about sort of, I can't remember which order the conversation took place, but our booking agent is a really nice guy called Rad Saunders. He's amazing. He's been our booking agent for ages, and he works at a company called X-Ray. But there's another guy that works at X-Ray as well called Sean Faulkner, and he's amazing as well. And he was the guy that sort of put the Undead Raisins thing together. And then he said, "Well, that was really cool. That was really good fun. Did you enjoy that?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, why don't you think about maybe doing some 100 Reasons shows or something like that?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not against it. I had a really good time, but you know, everybody's kind of moved on. Everybody's doing their own thing in life. Larry's a record producer now. Andy, our drummer, does tour production stuff and works with like the 1975 and Queen and Adam Lambert and Pearl Jam and stuff like that, at a quite high level.
Yeah.
So it's not that we were out of each other's lives on purpose, but we weren't sort of what you call in regular communication, because everyone's just doing their own thing. So we finished Undead Rays and stuff, and Sean kind of put the idea in. I said, well, there's got to be, a good idea behind it or whatever. So Sean spoke to Rad, who's kind of the 100 Reasons guy. And he said, well, okay, we'll talk to management. And we all had a chat, and we all sat down and we said, well, maybe we should just see if we can hang out and write some new music and see how it goes. And we did, and it was amazing. And it was just, like, I think the Andy came down to Larry's studio in London for the day, whatever, and they jammed on some tracks or whatever. And then I sort of came after work, and we wrote, there's a track called Right There With You, which hasn't been released yet. It's kind of can obviously be on the record, but that came out of that first session, and it was just unbelievable. And we're like, wow, this is really cool. Because the whole point is you can't force things. And I think some bands have come back and it sounds really forced. And you haven't done anything for a long time, and it sounds like you're just there to kind of do it. There's no sort of what I'd call sort of quality control. And if it didn't feel right for us and whatever, and that meant on a personal level as well as on a creative level, then nothing was going to happen. But we all came away thinking, wow, this is incredible. And we sent the track to Andy Buse, the drummer, like that night, because we were all on WhatsApp and stuff and everything. And he was like, whoa, this is great. And just every time we got together, it was just amazing. And it was actually magical. And it kind of, it didn't take us back to those kind of first rehearsals, because it wouldn't. But what it was just a real kind of understanding that when we get in a room together and write, something really cool happens. And when it's organic and when it's not forced and you're not on what you might call the recording treadmill, and it's just there, this kind of stuff. And I think we all realized we had quite a lot to say as well, with that sort of content. So it just ended up, and I mean, I don't know when this podcast is going out, but at the time the album's not come out yet, and I think we're about 4 tracks in terms of singles. But like, there's still amazing stuff to come on that record, because it's just all amazing, and we listen to it all the time. And I can listen to it as like, not from my own, not like I'm in that band. I can listen to it and go, wow, love that record.
So would you say like the chemistry was still there when you guys all got together and it just kind of flowed? All that
Yeah,
creativity that was stored up over that 16 years?
yeah. We just write really, really well together, and it's easy. And maybe towards the end of the last time round with the 4th record, maybe it wasn't easy and it was a bit forced. And it didn't mean that I wasn't, I can look back on that record, quick the word, and go, yeah, there's some great stuff on it, but some of it was a bit forced. Whereas with this new stuff, it was just like boom, boom. And we'd be writing like 2 songs a day. And the record's got like 10 tracks on it. And I think we probably wrote about 20 or 24, something like that. So there's even like a whole nother album that's just on the cutting room floor that we liked, actually. There's stuff on there that's really good, but just stuff that we thought, but you know what, this doesn't work like well enough. So it was in a nice position to be in, where we could like choose the tracks for the record out of what was already a really good pile.
Yeah, hey, well, if it's any consolation, like just the 4 songs you guys have put out, like I've listened to them over and over again, and they're pretty dang good, man.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm really proud of them. So yeah, I agree with you. They're amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you deserve to be proud of it. Like it's like you said, there's a lot of bands who are pushing things out. Like it seems like post COVID, a lot of bands have been like I don't know, like reuniting or just pushing new albums out, and very few of them sound that good.
Yeah, well, we sort of started like writing before COVID, and then obviously it happened, so the sessions became a lot more sporadic. But every time we got together, it was still like magic was happening,
Yeah,
and it was really cool. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you have to kind of having. I suppose the biggest thing was sort of trying to keep it a secret from people that it had been happening, because we didn't want there to be any sort of big anticipation
yeah,
until it was ready to come out. So it's like, here's a new single, everyone, and people go, whoa, was not expecting that. So there's none of this kind of 100 reasons are back together and writing in the studio again and that kind of thing. It was
yeah.
really around kind of there being no expectation and it being a bit of a surprise when it happened.
Yeah, I mean that also gives you guys the freedom to kind of do things on your own time, though. There's no,
Yeah.
timeline and people hounding you about when the album's coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, the idea was to kind of have the album out in sort of 2021, but obviously tons of stuff got in the way. Um, and in fairness, I think because of the stuff getting in the way, it wouldn't have been ready in 2021. So we haven't been sitting on it for like 2 years. I
Yeah.
think it kind of pretty much ended up being like completely finished probably about 3 weeks before the first single came out.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it sounds too that you guys this album kind of I guess demanded to be made, instead of you forcing things out over the course of so many years just because you felt like putting something out like this probably sounds like it's going to be one of the most genuine albums, that have come out in a while.
I mean, I can say sort of from being in it that, that it is. And if anybody, people can have their own opinions and they're totally entitled to them, but sort of being in it, this was just an absolute joy to make, and an absolute sort of labor of love. And, we all bonded a lot more over it as well, in a really kind of good way, because we've all grown up, like we're saying, we've all got lives and other things going on. So, yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, so I've been listening to the 100 Reasons podcast that's been out, and that's like it's got a lot of really good stuff in there. Like I listened to, I was telling my wife, I'm like, these guys are a class act, because like I was listening to something you said about, I forget who it was. You said you like waited outside to meet somebody and then he came out and he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah,
Um,
that was Phil Anselmo from Pantera.
yeah, yeah. And you had made a comment like, you want to keep the fans happy because at the end of the day, they're the ones that like pay for the music. And, there's a lot of truth to that a lot of musicians are really cruel to their fans. But, it sounds like, you guys were never like that.
It's just it's unnecessary. That's the whole point. It's unnecessary. It doesn't mean it doesn't, we had to like postpone the last shows, which and I'm always sorry for having to postpone stuff, but that's going to irritate people and it will. But you obviously don't want to go out of your way to annoy people, and you just shouldn't be like that to people in general.
Right.
Just be nice to people, and be kind and stuff like that. That's all you need to do. I was in the store the other day, and it's because you're American, so I'm in the store, but in the UK, I'm in the shop. But I'm in the store, and then and someone's got a load of shopping or whatever, and I've got like 2 bits, like some milk and some bread, and just a person going, oh, do you just want to go in front of me?
Yeah.
Just even like little things. And I would do that to another person quite happily, because I do. I just think, be nice to your fans if you're in a band, but just be nice in general. It just doesn't matter what you do. I don't care who you are in life. Just don't be a dick. There's
Yeah.
no need for it.
Yeah. I mean, it literally costs nothing to be a decent human being.
It doesn't. And yet we spend so much of our time, some of us not being that. So yeah, just, yeah, be respectful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
yeah, and be thankful. If you're in a good position, that's what I always say about, the career that I've managed to have, which has had its ups and downs, but being able to tour and have a great time and do those kinds of things, that's a position of privilege, because not everybody gets to do it. It's not just something that everybody can do. And I don't mean that from a talent perspective. I mean as in terms of opportunity.
Yeah.
So, you know, be appreciative, be glad, you know, if you can do something you absolutely love and make a career out of it, you know, be grateful for that. Don't be a dick about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But you read some stories, and some musicians like they're you wonder how they still have people who like them around.
Yeah, but then also you can look at some people who just like, there are people out there that like to be treated badly.
Yeah,
And they're suckers for it and stuff like that, I know. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, sometimes if it's your kind of like, so over here in the UK, obviously you have like a band like Oasis,
mhm.
where the whole shtick is like, you know, be arrogant, be like that. And that's fine. Because if you're always going to be like that, that's all okay. But like the flitting from being cool to not being cool, that's not cool. So, you know, from my perspective, you know, when I look at bands like Oasis, you know, and arguably as well, if you sat down and spoke to these people on a one-to-one level, most of them will probably be quite nice anyway. You know,
Mhm.
I've met people in like really seriously heavy bands and everything, and they're all like really nice, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's yeah, for a while I still am like into, new metal and screamo and things like that. And like you go to those shows and like 9 times out of 10 you go and talk to those guys, they're gonna be super nice to you. Like they're just grateful
Mhm.
because they're recording on their smaller level bands, I guess you could say, and they're just grateful to have people out there.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Okay, so in the podcast, you keep mentioning the term trying to crack America. What does that mean? I know that America is like, when it comes to musical taste, it's like a child's birthday party. There's just noise everywhere and none of it really like meshes with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's I don't think the phrase is crack America. I mean, my only time like playing shows, I mean, I did my first two records were recorded in New York in a place called Magic Shop, which is amazing. It's not there anymore. And we did that with Dave Sardi, who was incredible. But the only shows we ever played were actually in Texas, which was at South by Southwest, which is incredible. But when we sort of talk about, or the UK talks about cracking America, it's not about it's about sort of having an audience. So
Mm,
you can, you know, if you look at America as a country, right, it's amazing anyway, just like you know, and it's got its good parts, it's got its bad parts, just like everywhere else in the world,
right.
right? But if you are a US band, for example, you can start at one side of the country, work your way to the next, and then come back again and back again. You can do that forever, as long as you've got people coming to your shows and buying t-shirts and that kind of thing. So you get a chance to kind of build an audience, and that's what British bands like to do. You know, England's really small, so you do like 10 shows in England and you can't tour again for a few more months because people have seen you.
Yeah.
Whereas you go from east to the west coast of America, by the time you get back to the, you know, you get to the west coast, and then by the time, you know, you start again on the east coast or whatever, it's time to do the round again, and you can do that. So when we think about cracking America, what we're really sort of talking about is, you know, connect. To me, I like, you know, I've got lots of friends that are American and they've always just been great people. So why wouldn't you want to go to that country and play shows there and have fun? So for me, it's just about what we wanted to do was, you know, there's an opportunity there to build a sustainable career if you can do well in America. So I know like the Brits talk about cracking America a lot. I don't think I've ever said I want to crack America. What I want to do is go to America and play shows and go on tour in America, because I never really had the chance to do that.
Do you guys have any plans to maybe one day come back over here and try it?
Um, I think it's one of those things where if it's, you know, we're all at points in our lives where it's not about making money, but it kind of has to be viable to do it, because we've all got families and mortgages. So you can't just go to your wife,
Right.
love you loads, babe, I'm just off to America for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. I'm going to come back with no money and I've used up all my holiday. Cheers. So no, but if you go, I'm going to go to America for a couple of weeks and play some shows where there's going to be people there to come and see you. You know, a friend of mine called R.E. Shepherd runs a bar in New York. I think it's called St. Vitus. And they have lots of kind of cool bands that go there. So if we went there, I'd love to play there. But I mean, when you kind of look at your Spotify stats at the moment, there's like a surprising amount of people in the US that actually listen to my, you know, to the band.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, but then again, America's so big, it's all spread out. So you can have 100,000 fans in America, and that's like 100 in
Like three
however
cities.
many towns. Yeah, exactly right. So it's difficult to sort of quantify. But yeah, if there's an opportunity to go to the US, I'd love to go. I love America. I've had every time I've been there, it's been amazing.
Hey, well, if you guys make it out here, I'll be there.
happy days.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So I mean, well, okay. So speaking of, America and music, like I actually in transitioning here into video games, like I actually discovered you guys playing a video game. I was playing
Okay.
Midnight Club 3 on the PSP. I remember I got one for my birthday one year, and then I worked at a movie theater at the time, and right next door to the movie theater was a Tower Records. So like I played the game, I heard the song, I'm like, oh man, it was Stories with Unhappy Endings.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh man, it was really good. So I went next door to Tower Records and I found your guys's Shatterproof is Not a Challenge inside the import section. And like I was a huge fan, from that point forward, but
Amazing.
I couldn't listen to anything else that you guys did because like iTunes hadn't come out yet. So they all I could get was what was, brought into the import sections at these record stores. But I that was kind of my first foray into your guys' music, and it's you guys that was a I don't know, there's just something about the way your guys' sound, like it's a mixture of, what would you call it, like it's not new metal but it's like grungy but like rock, I guess alternative.
I think we just I mean, this is the thing, right? Whenever you kind of put a label on something, someone's always going to disagree. So for me, I just tell anybody I'm in a rock band.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then anything else kind of falls in between that pretty much. So I like heavier music, when it's good. Some of my favorite bands are like Meshuggah and Converge,
Okay.
and stuff like that. So when it's done well, it's incredible, and there's nothing quite like it. So for me, I'd probably call those bands obviously sort of metal bands, but then even Converge are kind of like a hardcore band. I used to listen to like Sick of It All and a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff back in the day, which I still like now. But for me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm in a rock band, and then anything that's sort of anything within that is what it is. But me personally, I quite like the heavier side.
Yeah, my first like foray into heavy music was probably like As I Lay Dying and Under Oath and bands like that.
Yeah,
So
I
uh
love Dillinger Escape Plan as well.
oh
Bands
my
like that. Yeah.
gosh, yeah. Beartooth is
Oh
another
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah,
They just had an
yeah.
album come out, and like
Have
those
yeah.
guys have been just consistently good over the years. So and some bands they can do that, but other bands in that genre kind of seem like they're forcing music out, and it's just, or they're trying to, like, they're replacing guitars with electronica, and it's just not
Mm.
what it once was.
Well, I think the thing as well is when you're creative and you're doing it for quite a while, you kind of, not through any kind of what you call evil intent or anything, but you kind of end up on a bit of a treadmill.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt that towards the recording of Quick the Word Sharp the Action. I don't feel we were ready to record that like previous record.
Yeah.
So you feel a bit on the treadmill, and you're like, well, I kind of got to do it. So it's not that you're not being creative, but maybe what you're not doing is being as creative as maybe you would have liked to have been, if you had a bit more time and you're a bit more, a bit less pressure and things like that. Because remember, it's probably one of the worst things about the music business is it's the music business,
Right.
which is it's about making money, and it doesn't matter what size band you are or whatever, but you're making, you're there for a label to not saying that everyone's out there to make millions of dollars, because they're not, but you got to make money out of records to be able to continue to make records.
Yeah.
You got to get money out of shows to continue to play shows, that kind of thing. So if you don't do an album, if you do a record and then you don't do one, not everyone's in a position of like Meshuggah or Tool, where you get to spend, even before Tool took 13 years to release the last record that they did, which I'm going to say it now, was rubbish. All right.
Okay.
The last Tool
I
record was
thought that
rubbish.
too. I haven't vocalized that opinion.
You feel like you're not allowed to say it. That's the
Yeah.
problem. But it's rubbish. And trust me, right? I loved Undertow. I loved Anima. I loved 10,000 Days. I loved Lateralus. I loved those records. They're incredible records. But the last one, 13 years for a pile of old rubbish. So, but not everyone's in that position. And even before then, Tool would take 4 to 5 years between records, right? Which is cool, because when you listen to it, you're excited about it, and it's a really cool thing. So they're not kind of as on the treadmill as some bands are. But some bands are kind of like you say, you've got to get new material out to keep the momentum going, because you haven't been able to get into that world where you break what you might call a certain threshold where you can do that.
Yeah.
You can go away for 3 or 4, 5 years and come back, and your fan base will still be there. But while you're building up to that, and some bands will never build up to that. You know, I love Will Haven. Do you know Will Haven? That's Sacramento.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like stupid good band. Love Will Haven. And
Yeah.
they're kind of one of those bands that kind of release stuff sort of as and when, but just sort of the type of music that they make, it's going to be difficult for them to have that kind of sustainable career. So their albums are more few and far between these days because of their other sort of commitments. But they have to keep the albums coming. Sort of back in the day when Out the Diablo came out and WHVN, stuff like that. You know, that stuff has to be on a bit of a treadmill because you need to keep people interested. And sometimes you can be, as a band, fine with that and be amazing every single time. But for some people, that's just not the case.
Well, looking at you guys though, like your responses on social media, your fan base was, you know, they seem to still be there and excited to see you guys.
Yeah, I think so. And it's nice, you know, because yeah, it's just it's one of those things. It's heartwarming. You don't really know though, because we hadn't done anything for such a long time. So, you know, we're not sort of constantly on it and knowing what's going on. But the response has been amazing. And yeah, we're all like completely, you know, it's heartwarming, you know, stuff like that. And it's really nice to go, wow, all these cool people are still around and listen to the music and that kind of thing. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I've noticed too, as like I've transitioned from, you know, back like 10 years ago, and you know, I've gotten married, become a parent. Like I don't listen to as much new, you know, as many new bands anymore as I once did. You know, like I'll try to catch things as they pop up on iTunes from bands that I used to listen to, but for the most part, like I'm still a fan of the stuff that I listened to 10 years ago.
Yeah, me too. Although I do always check out the new Coheed and Cambria records, because that last one, Vaxis 2, was incredible.
Oh my gosh. We actually, me and my wife saw them in Austin last year, and it was
Yeah.
they were playing with the Used, and
All right.
yeah, it was just one of the best concerts I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I was never really a big fan of the Used, but on that first record, there's like 3 tracks on it that are just jaw-droppingly good.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah, there's definitely 3 on there. I can't remember all their names. I think it was Noise and Kisses, and then there was Taste of Ink,
Tasty.
and then there was another one. But there's like 3 tracks on that record that are unbelievable. Like, wow.
Yeah, yeah, like Box of Sharp Objects is like one of my all-time favorite songs by them.
Oh, fair play, man.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so back to, you know, let's move into gaming a little bit here. All right, I have a question for you. Guitar Hero, Rock Band, you know, these music games that have like the peripherals on them. Do you think that if one of your songs came on to one of those games, you think that you could 100% it?
No, and one song did.
Wait, which one?
So we had a track. I worked on Guitar Hero. So I did some work on DJ Hero and Guitar Hero. I worked at Activision like back in the day, and then I think Guitar Hero 5 came out, and we did like a download pack. So we had, I think it was a song, I think it was called I'll Never Know. I think that was the one. It was one of the songs off the Quick the Word album.
Okay.
And yeah, so that was on Guitar Hero as a free download pack. But no, I could never. I'm kind of a medium guy on Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, medium settings.
That keeps it fun though. You know, like if I remember playing is Guitar Hero 2 when that came out, you set it to, was it hard, I think is the most difficult one, and it's not even fun. You know, like it's satisfying, I guess, if you nail all those notes, but it's just not fun anymore at that point.
No, I mean, I play games for enjoyment only. I mean, my days of being good at games are long gone. You know, I see my son plays like a bit of Minecraft or whatever, and he's kind of going in and out of the menus and stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I know what he's doing, but to do that at that speed, no chance. And I got good at the original sort of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, like online when it was a thing.
Yeah.
I got really into that, and I got really into like Gears of War, the first and second ones. I played that loads online, absolutely loved it. But then I'm just nowadays, I mean, I go and do that stuff for enjoyment, but I'm not great at games anymore. And Guitar Hero, if it was come to me now, I'd still be firmly on medium.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anytime I start a new game, I play it on easy because like I don't have enough time to play video games anymore to like struggle on something for hours.
Honestly, I don't do that. I kind of stick to normal for most things. So yeah, the only time I go on super easy, I suppose, is sometimes on like some of the shmups I play. So because some of that stuff's really hard.
Yeah.
So I kind of generally start on that, really just more to learn patterns. And then at some point I will never be good. I'm never good. You know, I don't know how much you know about shmups and stuff, but I never really kind of go into that 1cc territory. And if I do, it's very rare. But I enjoy them.
Yeah, you talked about Call of Duty and stuff, but where did it start? Like every gamer has that like game that made them a gamer. Like it was a game that like made them want to keep going back to video games. What would you say yours was?
My first like proper computer was a Commodore 16.
Okay.
Right, so that was like proper old school, right, with the old tape deck and everything. And then I moved on to an Amstrad CPC 464, which I'm not quite sure if that was even like a thing in the US, but it kind of went up against the Commodore 64. It was in that kind of world.
Okay.
And it wasn't particularly great. And then I sold that and I bought, are you ready for this? I bought an imported Japanese Sega Mega Drive. Okay,
Oh,
which is
nice.
the Sega Genesis. So
Yeah.
which is the Sega Genesis. So I bought the Sega Mega Drive from Japan to the UK with Ghouls and Ghosts, and that was the one for me.
Oh, that game's amazing. All right, so when you had the imported Sega, so the Japanese Sega has the disc, not disc, sorry, the cartridge slot isn't the same. Like they have those like rings around the outside of the cartridges. So
yeah, so it was really just it was all to do with the what you call like the cartridge lock. So when you put the cartridge in, there's a bit of plastic that went in to lock the game into the system.
Okay.
Generally, I think with the US, because of the different shapes of the cartridges, the US and the UK ones had the same shaped cartridges. And if you wanted to put a Japanese game in, you'd have to take a hacksaw, I think, to the slot to make it wide enough. So the width of it was really quite thin. But if you had a Japanese one, you just removed the cartridge lock. You could just unscrew it normally with a Phillips screwdriver, take the cartridge lock out, and then just put the game in from whatever territory, and it would work for a while. Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. You know, I was like, as an adult, I've been collecting like Japanese Sega games, and I had to buy one of those like Retron HDs to play them.
Oh, you should get a you should, if you've got the money, you should go for like there's two ways I would say. If you go for like an analog SG.
Okay.
Have you seen that?
Oh, I've seen the Analog Pocket. I don't know if I've seen the
the SG is like the Mega Drive one, and it's full HDMI and everything else. Or if you're looking at actually playing on original hardware, then kind of again, right, I don't have the money for this, by the way, so I'm not being blasé. I couldn't afford this right now if I really wanted to, but if I had the money and I was collecting actual cartridges, I'd get the Japanese Mega Drive, and then you get this thing. It's called like a retro tink. Okay. And it's a video upscaler, but it's much better than have you heard of a thing called a FrameMeister?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a FrameMeister, but much better.
Okay.
So you get the retro tink, and it's like a 5x, and it'll basically take any signal you put into it and upscale it properly to HDMI and run really nicely without there being any issues. So yeah.
So like I remember I was showing my kids my Sega Genesis. This was last year, and I bought like 4 or 5 different like HDMI the RC8 HDMI converters. And the problem with a lot of new TVs is the fact that they won't you can't plug anything in that's not putting out a certain a certain amount. I what do you call like HD signal or whatever. But
it won't convert the signal properly, and it won't upscale it. You have to, the retro tink is a few $100.
Yeah.
You know, like the FrameMaster. But my understanding is that I've not tried it, but apparently it's incredible. And so anything else you have, so if you've got like a Super Nintendo lying around, you know, that'll work too. And you know, you plug that in and it will do it all and make it look amazing.
That's it, man. Like retro gaming is an expensive hobby.
Yeah, that's why sadly, I mean, I don't know how much you condone or don't condone emulation, but that's sadly the way I have to go.
Yeah, so you know, as far as like emulation goes, like I have an arcade in my living room that I've actually like put a lot of emulators on, but it's all like I feel bad about it, but like it's all stuff that like I feel like I can justify because I've owned it at some point in my life.
I think it's a yes or no. I think the issue I have is that the availability of those games is non-existent for
Right.
hundreds of them,
Yeah.
absolutely hundreds of them. So if you can get stuff officially, right, I promise you, right, I mean, I've got all the games consoles, right? So I've got like a Series X and a PlayStation 5, and I've got a Switch, and those are my kind of main things at the moment. But if someone's going to bring out a retro compilation or something, I'm probably going to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that I've got it, and the money's there. I mean, I think, again, with the Switch, with the Nintendo stuff, you have like Nintendo Switch Online and stuff like that. But yeah, I pay for everything I could feel I can pay for, and I don't sort of. But there's always going to be certain things where the availability just isn't kind of going to be there.
Right.
I mean, at the moment, right? I'm going to sound like really nerdy here, but there was like, did you ever play Earthbound on the SNES?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
That
a
one's
sequel to
hard.
that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and it's like in Japan they're called like Mother. I think
Mother. Oh,
they're like,
that's yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a GBA, Game Boy Advance sequel. It never came out in the West. So you can get a hacked translated ROM and run that on an emulator, and you can play the game. So, I think, it's not like we're in the modern age now, right? If something from 30 years ago, I'm not saying it has to be public domain. I'm not getting into even like a copyright issue here as well. But the thing is, if something's not available and you can't get it, I bought Romancing Saga 3 on the PlayStation because they'd released it, and brilliant. But I've had it on a hacked ROM for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So if you provide it, but then also you've got to look at, if you're looking at on a commercial level, how many people are going to buy those games? So if they bring it out and they produce it,
Right. Right. Well, I know, like for a while. Do you guys have GameStops out there?
No, we don't. We only just have Game.
Okay.
And then we have CEX, which is kind of like the second-hand store. We don't really have much in terms of retail. We don't have GameStop or anything now. We did have for a very short while, a bunch of years ago, but no.
Yeah, because I know for a while that they were buying, like they were releasing Japanese RPGs strictly through them, but they were only producing so many copies of it, and they're upselling them by like charging about $150 for them. So you couldn't, if you're gaming on a budget, that's kind of not going to work out for you very well.
I mean, I've still got most of my thing, right? Bearing in mind I'm in the UK, you guys in the US had loads of stuff that came out that wasn't available over here. So there were things like Chrono Cross, like a lot of the Square Enix stuff, like I think I remember Xenogears not being out, in the UK. You had to buy import. So I chipped my PlayStation, and I chipped it not for piracy, but because I could buy, American games. And also over here, back in the day, it's not a thing now, but we had like the PAL NTSC thing where your games ran faster and full screen, whereas because of our PAL TV system, they were 17% slower with black borders unless they were optimized, which didn't happen very often. It's not a thing now, but back then it was a big thing. So, you'd be like buying shoot 'em ups and RPGs and stuff that were running slower unless you had the US version, which was, faster and superior. So every time I came over to the US to record records and stuff, I'd be going into Electronics Boutique, or whatever it was called back then, and GameStop, and buying all this kind of, like things like Vandal Hearts and stuff like that for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And NTSC and Grandia as well. I bought Grandia. I remember buying that.
Yeah, Grandia. I remember. Did you ever play Ark the Lad?
Mm-hmm.
So that was one
I've
that
got
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I've got the collection in my loft, the Ark the Lad collection.
Oh my gosh. See, like that's one that they never released the single games over here. You had to buy them in the collection, and they came out like after all the Japanese versions had come out. So like that was one that I didn't get to play until like the very tail end of my time with the PS1. And then when all the new stuff came out, like I started trading in all these old games, and now I can't get them back unless I want to pay $400 or $500 for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing for me. I mean, when you sort of trade stuff in, you don't necessarily know it's going to be worth something later on, but even if it is, but that's the whole point of emulation, really, because again, right, I look at like I like Tales games, right, like the Tales series, and if you want to get hold of Tales of Destiny on the PS1, you've got to pay top dollar for that. And Namco could literally just go, right, here you go, here's something on the PlayStation Store, nice emulation, $15-$20, have it. But they don't.
I don't understand that at all, because they're it's not like they're not going to make a profit off of that.
Yeah, I mean, Tales series to me is, I mean, I love Tales series, and even like I won't be buying the Tales of Symphonia remaster either. I've still got it on my GameCube
Mm-hmm.
up in my loft and stuff like that. So, but I wouldn't buy it anyway because it's like a 30 FPS version, whereas the GameCube's 60 FPS. So why are you putting something into 4K at half the frame rate?
Oh
So
my
even stuff like that for me, you know, that's how nerdy I get. Sorry,
No,
I
you're
hope your
fine.
listeners
No,
are cool.
I agree because like
But
you know, my wife is really into Galaga, right? So we bought the arcade one up version
nice.
of Galaga, and
Yeah,
it was, come to find out, it was a PlayStation, it was an emulation of the PlayStation 3 version. So it had, you didn't have like the rapid fire like the original arcade one had. You just
yeah.
had like, it only fired in like bursts of three, and it ran a lot slower. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, even when they're recreating, or not recreating, but remastering these games, you're not getting the original version most of the time.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but I've heard quite a few things about Arcade One Up and the quality of their
It's not.
hardware. I mean, I've certainly not felt the need to buy one uh,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
yeah, it's quite sort of dubious from
yeah,
my understanding. Yeah, and parts as well and stuff like that. You know, I don't, I don't have like the time to invest in like arcade sticks and stuff, but I do have an arcade stick, and I've got nice buttons in it and a joystick that I like. You know, for playing shmups and fighting games and things like that.
yeah.
So I'm cool. But the joysticks that normally come with those things, I'm also like a little bit. And I don't know if you ever bought like just an arcade joystick. So I don't know how into that you want to go, but you know, you have like your Sanwa joysticks and everything, which come with most of them.
Yeah.
And then you have, I think it's Hayabusa, I think, which is like a Korean company that make arcade parts. But I like Seimitsu, and they make really good. So there's like three really good kind of joystick makers. And if you buy just an arcade joystick on its own, right? So you're not trying to put it in anything, you're going to buy
Right.
it for your stick or your cabinet or whatever, like $25.
Yeah,
So,
that's
so like an arcade, actual arcade will be in an arcade machine. Like joystick is like $25, maybe $30 max. An arcade one up won't put that into a what, $350, $400 cabinet.
yeah, they just have the cheap little like plastic ones with the ball that spins on top of
Yeah. And the buttons are like you know, you buy like Sanwa buttons or Semitsu buttons, like $2.50 each.
it. Hmm.
Like, and so you know, and Gallagher like maybe has 3 buttons on it if you're talking 1 player, 2 player, and your shot button. I can't remember exactly, but if you can't spend probably altogether maybe $35 on the joystick and the buttons,
Yeah, it's not not a
it's
quality
not
product.
it's not cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, we got rid of it. We ended up getting like At Games put out a Ultimate Arcade Kit, and that one you can actually like, you know, mod and put emulators on and stuff. So that one's been a lot better. But yeah,
Excellent.
I mean, it's an expensive hobby, and Arcade One Up is like, we've had nothing but trouble anytime we've played around with one of those.
Yeah, I'd leave those alone.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you know, I've had people like come, I mean, I'm an English teacher, right? That's my day job. And like I always have, anytime I talk about video games, I have like kids come up to me and say, "Hey, aren't you too old to be playing video games?" And it's like, breaks my heart, man. It breaks my heart. And but it's I, I don't know, like I feel like as an adult, like that's the one thing that like I can go to that like pulls me out of reality even more than like books and movies do.
Yeah, me
So
too.
yeah, yeah. So what, like, in your opinion, what is it like as an adult that keeps you going back to games after, you know, enjoying them for all these years?
I think I think I find a lot less games like compelling. So I can generally these days sort of look at like a preview of something and kind of decide whether I think it's going to be something I don't buy many games day one at all. I probably maybe buy 2 or 3 games day one, but most stuff I wait for it to kind of come into a sale. But I think as long as it's something that I feel like I'm going to enjoy,
Yeah.
and it's something that's kind of up my street and it's quite cool, you know, I do read reviews, but I'm not always 100% influenced by them.
Hmm.
Like, you know, and there's certain things, there's 2 developers I'll always buy day one, no problem at all. And that's anything from FromSoft, which appeals to me. I mean,
Yeah.
When Armored Core comes out,
Oh my
whether it's good or not, I don't know. But the thing is, I've never really sort of connected with Armored Core, so I'm hoping it's going to be really good. And if you love Armored Core, you're going to want it to be amazing. But I got Demon Souls when it first came out, you know. I imported that from America because PlayStation 3 is a region free.
Yeah.
And even then, I'd played things like Kingsfield and stuff on the PlayStation 1. But FromSoft games are generally released like in a not broken state. And that's the thing for me. It's not about whether the game's going to be great day one. It's whether it's going to be playable. You know, even like I haven't bought the new God of War yet, but, you know, I'm sure it's very good. I loved the first one, but £70 in the UK is just a lot to spend on a game.
Oh, it's expensive.
So it is, yeah, and that's cool. I don't begrudge that because, you know, that's they cost a lot of money to make. But the thing for me is FromSoft is it's going to work day one, and you're not going to have any issues. And even if there is a patch, that's fine. You know, the game would still work without it. Whereas a lot of Western developers have that issue. And then there's anything by a developer called M2. And I don't know, do you know M2?
No, what did they do?
So they're kind of like when you talk about things like Gallagher and stuff like that. So they do. I've got to talk about M2 because that's kind of what I like. But they kind of like they kind of do quite a lot of Japan only stuff, but they've also done lots of sort of emulation work for people.
Okay.
So if you've so the next game that they're bringing out, I think is called, do you remember like Ray Force and Layer Section or anything like that, or Ray Crisis? They're old shoot 'em ups.
It sounds familiar, but I don't think I've played them.
Yeah, so they're like arcade games and stuff like that. So M2 will kind of like port them over, but the ports are like super accurate. Like everything is mint, like so well done, and care and attention to detail is incredible.
So they do the opposite of what most
yeah, like completely the opposite. And they do these things in Japan, and there's a couple of things as well. So if you've got like a actually, yeah, have you got a US PlayStation? You've got PlayStation? Yeah. So if you go onto the PlayStation Store and look up things like Ketsui, have you seen Ketsui? Do you know that?
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like amazing. So they're not available in the UK. So you cannot get Battle Garega, Dangan Feveron, or Ketsui, and probably a couple of others that might be on the US. So you can't get them in the UK. But I've bought them all like on disc from Japan, and it's M2 that do the conversions. So they're all like super cool, and they call it M2 shot triggers, so it's like its own brand. And they've just done things like Flying Shark and like Kyoku Tiger, or Twin Cobra they called it in the US, you know, and they come out in these little packages that are just incredible. And they started off like, I seem to remember there was like a game on the Mega Drive actually might have it called Gauntlet 4.
Yeah,
so they did Gauntlet 4, which kind of had its own complete mode, like outside of the arcade mode, which was like a, you know, this is why we should do Gauntlet, and they turned it into like a miniature RPG. So they've done all these things over the years. They did like there's a thing on the Switch that came out, it's like the Mana collection, which was like Secret of Mana and Trials of Mana, the old ones. So they did that, did the ports on that. They've done a bunch of Switch ports of stuff that's on Sega Ages. So, you know, anything that they do is just, even if it's kind of bare bones, it's still like top tier. So you can get like Thunder Force 4, which I think you guys in the US call it like it's like lightning. I don't know, what's it called? You know, Thunder Force 3, and then it was like something or other. It wasn't called Thunder Force 4 in the US. It was called something strange and weird. But they did the port of that onto Sega Ages, and it's an incredible. It's like super accurate port. So it's stuff like that they do, and they just go, right, day one, anything M2 shot triggers, I'm in.
It's gonna be great.
You know it.
Yeah, because I played the Mana collection. Like I really enjoyed that. So that was a pretty top tier quality.
Yeah, I've got it. But but M2, I didn't realize you have to look at Wikipedia to even find out some of this stuff. But M2 did the apparently they did the conversions of the original SNES cartridges. So yeah,
that's all, because it seems like when a lot of the stuff gets like, I guess, released from Japan that wasn't originally here, that they're, you know, starting to release now, whether it's on you know, these digital marketplaces or physical, it's not the same game that they got to play in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, the things that you guys had in the US, like at least back in the day, you had a lot of localization stuff and localization problems. And a lot of it was to do with sort of religious imagery, you know, and things like that. So like, you know, old school Castlevania games were quite sort of heavily sanitized for the US market, or people just wouldn't be a fan. So you kind of ended up with stuff like that. But if you get like again, right, if you've got your PlayStation 4 and you buy like the Contra collection or the Castlevania collection,
Yeah.
it's all like M2. And they've got like the different, but they've got the Japanese ROMs as well. So you can go to like Super Castlevania 4, like the Japanese version, where you're going to get the Japanese text, but all of the religious imagery is going to be there, that kind of thing.
That's like I know it's like Square puts out was it their version of some of like the Final Fantasy games have stuff that was cut out from the original game when it's released over here, and you can buy like Final Fantasy international versions or whatever, and you get some of that stuff put back into it. But yeah, I know a lot of the RPGs seem to have some of that stuff taken out when it comes out here.
Yeah, it was a lot to do with like themes, I think, and in fairness, a lot of it was kind of centered around religion, where Japanese people and developers obviously weren't really overly concerned with stuff like that, whereas certain areas of America are very sort of religious, yeah, exactly, right. So you have that, so yeah, you'd get that kind of censorship. And the thing as well is Nintendo and stuff even at the time didn't really necessarily like it, because it was kind of a little bit against their sort of branding, whereas in Japan it just didn't matter.
Yeah, it also seems like it's a weird like copyright, or might be a weird like copyright issue. If you're like taking something and repurposing it for another country, but you're taking out, big chunks of it.
Yeah, I think you can run into that, absolutely. Can't remember what, but even then you just get like there was some, if you look at like Mario Brothers 2, right? That was like Doki Doki Panic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And like completely different game, but what they did was they kind of repurposed it for Mario because they needed a stopgap, and the lost levels was just too hard for Western people. So you kind of ended up with Doki Doki Panic being reskinned, and then there was another one, I think it was on the Mega Drive, it was like called the Cap Attack, and that was a reskin of something else as well, but I can't remember. I think so anyway. There was a few things where that happened.
Yeah. That sounds right. Even yeah, a lot of the stuff from Japan, it is hard. Even like playing something like Sonic, or Mario, like I struggled with a lot of that stuff when I probably couldn't even beat them now if I tried.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the original Sonics. I bought that for the Mega Drive, and it was easy, but it was easy because in the UK we had the PAL version, so it goes back to black borders and 20%, well, 17% slower. So you could kind of probably complete games easily because of that.
As fast, yeah.
All
right, so I got to ask, like you're mentioning all these. Okay, actually, two questions here. One, you like the Tales games. What did you think? Did you play Tales of Arise?
I have it. I'm about an hour or two in, so it hasn't opened out yet. But I've got Vesperia more on the go at the moment. Okay, so when I do tap into Tales, I've got Vesperia to finish first.
Yeah,
but I've still got Berseria to finish as well, actually, which I haven't even started. But I'll go from Vesperia once that's done, and I'll move on to Arise, which I hear is absolutely incredible.
It is amazing. Like it's the one game like that I've played in the past couple years where I was kind of sad when it was over, because there's no like expansions for those games. Like I opened up a Game Plus, but I was like, I got a few other things I want to play first, but I probably will end up going back to it. It was an amazing game.
Oh, okay. You might have just swayed me to ditch Vesperia for a bit and go full on into Arise.
It's great. It's like, I don't know, like I love that. I like turn-based RPGs, but like I love action RPGs, and everything just like flows so smooth. Everything from the combat, like you have that like cheesy anime dialogue a little in some places, but for the most part, like the game flows really, really well.
Well, I think that's the thing with Tales games. You know what you're getting.
Right.
And but if anything, I think recently they seem to be just being sort of getting better.
Yeah.
And you always get like a misstep here and there. But I think I finished Tales of Exilia, which was really cool. Tales of Symphonia. I think I've done Fantasia. I've done Destiny.
Okay.
And I've done Destiny 2, which is also kind of Tales of Eternia, depending on whether you played on PlayStation 1 or PSP.
Yeah.
And then I think there was, what else have I done? I've played a lot of them. And I think it was Tales of Systeria. I think I did that as well, which is really cool. I think the thing as well that's good about the Tales games is the combat's normally really good. So if you get a good combat system, even sometimes when the story is okay, you can get through it. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure I've got Abyss and Legendia on PS2 in my loft as well.
Because I played Tales of Destiny, and then I hadn't touched any Tales game until Arise came out, and that was now I'm curious, like, if I need to go back and start playing some of those other ones that I missed out on.
Yeah.
All right,
There's definitely a few. You should do Symphonia. If you haven't done Symphonia, do Symphonia. It's
Okay,
incredible. Yeah, but
what is that on? That's
it's on PS2, GameCube, and soon to be on modern consoles, but at 30 FPS. So if you've got a GameCube,
It's better.
get a GameCube. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So you're like you're talking about all these games that you have in your loft. Like, would you say how many games do you think you have total?
I don't really know because I have sold stuff and got rid of stuff as
Okay.
time's gone on, but I've still got plenty of PS1, plenty of GameCube, some Wii titles, plenty of PS2 stuff. I've got like what else have I got? I've got things like Digital Devil Saga, like 1 and 2. So I've got stuff like that, like in the loft, and a few. I've got the what was it? Xeno Saga. I've got all 3 of those as well, which I think are worth a pretty penny, some of them.
Yeah.
So I've got those in my loft as well, I think. Yeah, just sort of sitting there, sort of not really doing too much.
See, that's one thing like I regret in life is I kept a lot of the PS1, Sega era games, like the previous generation consoles. I kept a lot of those games, like the ones that I enjoyed, and I was like, oh, I'd like my kids to play this one day. But I got rid of a lot of things that are worth a lot of money now, and like they're really hard to find. So as I'm trying to like go back and recollect these catalogs, I'm thinking to myself like, man, I can't afford to pay $1,000+ for a black label copy of this.
No, I know what you mean. I've had a few things that I had like Radiant Silvergun and quite a few kind of Japanese Saturn stuff that's worth a fair few pennies. I even had like Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Oh my
and
gosh,
stuff like
yeah.
that. But you kind of the thing for me is that I kind of refuse to regret it because it's happened and there's nothing you can do about it. And you sit there and think, well, if I could have held on to it, but you maybe sold it at the time because you needed to sell it, and that's just how it is. And I think I had like a over here in the UK, we had like collector's edition of Bloodborne, which kind of came with like an inkwell and all this really cool stuff and really nice. And I sold that for a good amount of money because it came to PlayStation Plus. So for me, the way I kind of look at stuff now is like, if I can own it on a modern console, I'm not worried about it being in a loft. And I think that in some areas, emulation is really good now.
Yeah.
I don't have like the best PC in the world. I have this front end called Launchbox, which is really cool.
What is that?
I have that.
Is that like
it's a front end. So you have Launchbox, and then you can put things like RetroArch. Any emulator that you have boots through Launchbox, but it's like a really nice thing. You can get this thing. I'm starting to plug it now, aren't I? But you get this thing. You pay like $50 like for a lifetime's updates, and you can get this thing called Big Box, which makes it kind of full screen. You can get different kind of skins for it to make it look really nice, but it's kind of like a housing for all of your games, and it downloads all of the artwork. And
is this something you plug into your TV, or is it like a computer program?
It's a computer thing, so it's PC. So you do that, or if you want to plug into TV, for the most part, just get like a Raspberry Pi, and then go somewhere online, which is really cool, and download like a set image onto your SD card and boot that. There's loads of ways to do it. I mean, I like the idea of playing on the big TV, but most like 16-bit games and things don't look great on.
Look better on a PC.
The screens are smaller, so they just don't. You don't have like the big kind of pixelation which can occur when you're on like an old console.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I have become a fan of, and it's like on the new stuff, is I've just become more, probably in the last maybe 3 months, I love scanlines now.
What is that?
So it's like the CRT emulation.
Okay.
So when you have like really old games and they're on big TVs and things, they don't normally look great because of the pixelation, but the scan lines, when you add those, and normally emulators will allow you to do that. So if you've got like RetroArch or something, so you do that, but what you can do is you can add shaders, and the shaders are effectively like different kind of ways to have the screen looking. So you can put the scan lines in, and the scan lines are what old CRTs used to have. So your old TV 20 years ago had scan lines. You might not remember it, but it was kind of like, you know, it's like the lines. Just look up retro scan lines or something on Google, and
That's
you'll know
like
what I mean.
when you watch a VHS tape and you had like you could see the lines going through. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, that was normally like no, it was your TV itself refreshed. So when it did like a refresh, it was only ever displaying half the screen at any one time. But it
Okay.
was such fast flickering that the way they flickered it would make a complete image.
Ah,
So I tell you what, just if you go to Google and just
okay.
type in retro gaming scan lines, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as you see it. But
Okay.
you can add those in to your monitor to make it look like an old TV.
Oh,
And
that's
because those games were programmed for old TVs, the pixel art looks like better for me. But some people would disagree because it's a personal preference thing.
Well, I mean, it kind of brings back that, lets you fully indulge your nostalgia.
Indeed.
All right. So speaking to like emulators and you're talking about PlayStation Plus. So like I have the Xbox and I have like Games Pass. I don't have PlayStation Plus. That's like one I used to pay for it, but that's back when it was like super expensive, so I stopped. But yeah, we're moving into this like weird all digital future. Like what are your thoughts on that? Like do you prefer to have like physical copies, or would you rather, like, if there's something that you want to keep like for sentimental value or nostalgia or whatever, or collectability, would you prefer to have something physically?
Some things I keep physically, some of it sort of for sentimental value.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not. I know some people get really precious over physical versus digital, but for me, digital for me is just more convenient. However, what I won't do is I won't pay. How much is a PlayStation 5 game on the US store? Is it what,
70
70,
bucks. Yep.
$70, right?
Yeah.
So in US terms, like it's the same thing in the UK, it's £70.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to spend £70 on a game that has no like resale value. Never going to happen.
But that's
All
like
right.
all the games now that are coming out. Like with the only games I've noticed here that keep that hold their value are like Japanese RPGs.
Yeah. So to me, what I'd be doing is say when Elden Ring came out, I bought that physically. Okay. Day one physical. Thank you very
Amazing
much.
game, by the way.
Exactly. And I've platinumed it twice actually, because I played it on PS4 and PS5. I've done both versions. So for me, like I'll keep that, but when that hits a sale and it's, again, because you're in the US, when that's $10, I'll buy it and I'll sell the physical, because I don't need to have the physical most of the time.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in is the convenience, but what I won't do is I won't pay $70 for the convenience of having it downloadable onto my hard drive.
Yeah.
That's too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's that kind of happy medium. The only things I get on physical are, M2 games.
Yeah.
And even like Ketsui, like, which I think is like $35 on the US store, because I'm actually waiting for that to come on sale in the US because I have a US account. And I'm waiting for it to come on sale because I've got the Japanese version and I just want English menus. So I'd pay $20 for English menus.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't sell the original. I would keep that. And that's already one of those games that's like, it's £110 or something already that people are paying for it. Yeah. So for me, stuff like that I keep. So anything M2 shot triggers, I would like physical and I'll keep it. But certain stuff, yeah, if it's, digital and it's, ends up being like Resident Evil 3 the other day was like £8 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no point in buying the physical version, just buy the digital version, because it doesn't matter whether you keep it or sell it, you're never going to get more than that for it. So for me, I'm not so precious over holding on to stuff for collectors purposes anymore as much as maybe I don't even think I was back in the day. I think I just liked to have physical. Whereas now I think I've just embraced digital, because in some cases that's the only way you're going to get something. Chrono Cross, you're not going to get that physically on a, well, mind you can in Asia. I think you can get Chrono Cross on the Switch or something as a physical release. But
Chrono Cross, you can get, it came out here on the PS1.
Yeah, it did, but like I'm talking about like the remaster that came out on on the new console, so you can get that on Switch. But yeah, I think I've still got that as well in my loft. But but with that, that's going to be digital only anyway. So for me, it's kind of just like a way up. It's about convenience versus price, really.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe back then, if I was a multi-millionaire, I'd own it all.
Right.
But also, but my PlayStation's down by my TV, and then to the left of it's where I keep my games, and
Not a lot of space.
yeah, there's not loads of space. So to have like stuff on a hard drive is just more convenient.
Yeah, that's true. I guess like my only fear with like this, the all digital future is the fact that like Amazon has come out and said that like, hey, when you buy digital stuff from us, you don't actually own it. So like we can take it away at any moment. And then, looking at Nintendo's virtual console, like I owned a ton of games on the Wii and they just vanished.
But that's the thing, you don't own those games, and you never have. And even when and the reason is because what you're doing is paying for a license to use it in a particular way, which is obviously on your console.
Play it, yeah.
Or but PC users have had Steam for like 20 years. Their boxed products have been pretty much a thing of the past for however long you can go back. But I think console owners are just kind of used to there being like a physical release. But I can't remember what it was. It might have been Halo Infinite or Call of Duty, and it's just like literally the disc that you have is just a executable file, which then makes you download the entire game onto your hard drive anyway, which I think is bad, by the way. I think if you're going to do that, that's wrong.
It's a majority of Xbox games though now too.
Some of them, yeah. I think if you're doing that, that's wrong, because if you're buying the game, you should be able to use it from the disc. And yes, it might need to install information onto the hard drive, but you should be able to play the game from the disc. So if you have no internet connection at some point, the servers get taken offline. But I think with things like PlayStation and things like Xbox, it's highly unlikely those things are ever going to truly go away.
Yeah, it's true.
And at least if they do, they'll probably be long after you and I have shuffled off our mortal coil. So for me, I'm not really too worried about it. I mean, if I was a Stadia, which is like closing down like today or tomorrow or something.
Yeah, good old Stadia.
Exactly. I mean, I never would have invested in that in the first place. And anybody that thought, yeah, I'm going to get into Stadia, I mean, I'm glad they're getting their money back. I really am. But I could have told anybody
that wasn't
straight away, day one, that wasn't going to work. Yeah, because the technology is just not there. And the business model was beyond stupid. So, I think the only thing is that, today I was seeing an article or whatever when they're sort of talking about, it's time for a new Nintendo Switch. You're like, yeah, well, yeah, it is. Right, there is time for a new Nintendo Switch. It needs new hardware. It's like 7 years old now or something daft.
Yeah.
So we need a new one. However, what you want to happen is you don't want to have to then sort of start reinvesting into a software library again. I want to take my Nintendo Switch games and put them into the next Nintendo Switch. So what I really want now is I don't want a brand new console anymore. Same with PlayStation. When PlayStation 5 went, yeah, we're doing backwards compatible, happy days.
Yeah.
I was like, great, thank you. And to be honest, when the very first Xbox One came out, along with PlayStation 4, I could understand why PlayStation 4 didn't have backwards compatibility, because the PlayStation 3 architecture is just absolutely weird, which is why you only get it in a streaming,
Yeah,
capacity.
they were different disc types though too, weren't they? Because I know PS4 made a switch to Blu-ray, didn't they? And then
PS3 had Blu-ray as well. Yeah, because it was a Blu-ray player. But it was more to do with the architecture being like quite bespoke, whereas Xbox 360 was emulating Xbox original OG Xbox games. So I was expecting Xbox One to just play 360 games, but it didn't. And I was like, well, screw you, because I had a massive 360 collection. So I'm not into the mindset now of sitting there thinking, well, Nintendo bring out a new console, it better have backwards compatibility, or I just won't be buying it.
Yeah.
Or it's got to be really small.
Right.
To make it. Yeah, exactly. Right. But this is the thing, people are sort of, space under your TV. So when PlayStation was quite quiet about backwards compatibility, but when they were like, yeah, everything on PlayStation 4 is going to work on PlayStation 5, apart from maybe 4 games, which no one cares about, I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Happy days.
Yeah. I mean, and so like I was not originally like a PlayStation person, but with the PlayStation 5, like I would much rather, there's just something about the feel of the controller and just the console itself. I would much rather play a game on my PS5 than my Series X.
I agree. I've got the Series X in another room where my son can play it and I'll dabble or whatever. But I much prefer the PlayStation 5 controller. And I know that the PlayStation 5 isn't quite as powerful as the Series X, but I don't care. And in fairness, I'm just going to say this now about Series X. The loading times that they were promising, which they were saying were as good as PlayStation 5, have not happened.
No, I mean, you still like it's like even like game installations on there, you put the disc in, like it takes hours to install a game, whereas like the PS5, I can put something in 30 minutes later, I'm ready to play it. So it's not
that kind of thing they did with the hard disk and the controller inside that's very bespoke. They've done a very good thing with. But I remember like Microsoft literally saying, yeah, well, our Xbox will do the same sort of thing. Well, I'm going to just say this now, Microsoft. I'm not a fanboy, by the way, because I've got one,
Yeah, right.
And I have Game Pass as well. But it's like you haven't done that yet.
No.
And we're nearly 3 years in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be interesting. Whereas,
yeah.
But I mean, but when you kind of like, when I first built out the PlayStation 5 and I played like Demon's Souls or Spider-Man or whatever, and those load times are unbelievable. And I'm hoping at some point that third parties will actually embrace that, because they still haven't themselves. Only Sony's embraced it.
Yeah.
So I want to see some of that, but then that's cross-platform stuff potentially from, I don't know, I'm waffling a bit, but there we go.
No, I mean, I agree. Like the cross-platform stuff is irritating. They're like the only company that won't play ball with everybody, and I guess that's kind of frustrating in its own way.
Yeah, exactly. But they're in a position where for me, it's all about games. It always has been.
Yeah.
And the platforms that I choose and get involved in, I've probably got Series X because I like it, and Game Pass was great. So for me, that's fine. But most of the games that I like and want to play are on PlayStation. And no disrespect to Microsoft, because they've done some great stuff before, but at the moment, that kind of first party stuff, it isn't happening.
No, it's not. They kept promising, and with COVID, I know a lot of things got pushed back, but they kept saying we're going to be having all this stuff come out. Like I've still, I loved Hellblade, Senua's was it Senua's Sacrifice? Like, and I've been waiting for the new one to come out, but like there has not been an update on that for, I want to say, probably 2 years now.
Yeah, it's definitely gone quiet for a while. But also like, things like Halo Infinite, which was just so dull.
Yeah.
And, and I love Halo. I like Bungie Halo. For me, my favorite Halo is actually Reach.
Reach,
I just thought
the soundtrack is amazing in that game.
Yeah, but it was just like, to me, it was just Bungie, like top of it all. All over it, knowing exactly what Halo should be, how it plays, everything else. And then Infinite was, I think I did get through the campaign, but I didn't I wasn't compelled to keep moving forward. Yeah. And I found it just really boring. There was a lack of diversity in the biomes of the game. And then when you went inside, it was just boring.
Yeah, you were doing the same things over and over again, though. It's like, go to this point on the map, do this. And what was so great about the first 3 or 4 Halos was not 4, that one's not great, but like Halo 1 through 3, like it had such the soundtrack had such a rich mythology, and every level was different.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be said still. I think this is, to me, potentially why Sony are still doing so well, because they haven't shied away from having that single player experience, because people do want that. There's multiplayer games out there that are great, and you can have loads of fun, you can play your Fortnite, whatever you do, but there's still a lot to be said about just literally, I'm on an adventure, I'm sat at home, I've got my headphones on, I'm chilling out, I'm not trying to compete with anybody else. It's not a game as a service. It's just literally do the story, enjoy it, and come away like you've just come out from watching a great film or whatever. And I think they still know how to nail that.
Yeah, I finished Ghost of Tsushima not too long ago, but that's what it was. It's like a cinematic / gaming experience, and it definitely like left me, I don't know, wanting to play more PS5 than, you know, Xbox.
Yeah. And again, I'm not getting into that. You know, I never got into that kind of thing, even with the Super Nintendo Mega Drive on the playground stuff back in the day, or Genesis, whatever. But I just think, you know, every console to me is about the games, and I think Game Pass is great because, like we say, third-party stuff comes to Game Pass, which is great. But even then, I bought Persona 5 Royal the other day, you know, because it was like, what Game Pass did was you can have it on Game Pass, it's on Game Pass.
Yeah.
But I still bought it on PlayStation because I wanted to play it on PlayStation in my front room.
Yeah.
So, but I think what Game Pass does is it can kind of devalue a physical release really quickly. Now, I don't know how it sort of works in the US, but in the UK, you know, if you buy a game by Bethesda, so say the new Doom comes out or something, don't ever buy a Bethesda game. I mean, you can't now, it doesn't matter anyway because it's all on Game Pass, but beforehand, you would never need to buy a Bethesda game, because apart from maybe something like Skyrim, because give it like 3 weeks and it'll be half price.
Yeah.
You know, and there's certain companies where, you know, that's always going to be the case. And even when I bought sort of Tales of Arise, you know, I didn't have the capacity to take on a new RPG, you know, at that time. So I thought, well, I'm not going to pay $60. So in the UK, I waited till it was like $25 and bought it then.
Yeah.
Because you know that there are certain companies that will discount stuff fairly quickly, or there's games where you go, right, it's day one, and there's games you go, wait for the sale.
And you always get that feeling too when you know a game will probably be half price. I mean, look at anything Ubisoft, you know, that's 3 weeks later, it's it's half the price it was on release.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a nice article the other day that I was reading. I haven't read it all yet, but it was to do with actually Ubisoft understanding that Assassin's Creed games have just become too big.
They're huge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think I completed Origins, and then I started playing Odyssey, which I was really enjoying. But then I just kind of thought, you know, you get so bogged down in it. And that's the issue. You don't feel like you're driving something along, right? You just feel like you're in this endless bog that you're walking slowly through, because, you want to try and do this or try and do that. And it's a really long journey. It's all kind of overly bloated. And then Valhalla, and a friend of mine actually was really kind and sorted me out a code for Valhalla, and I think I got to England and did a few things, and it just became too big. You know,
well, you look at the map on that game, and like there's spots all over the map, you know, like you do the Eagle Towers or whatever, but there's like there's a side quest here, and there's a side quest there, there's a side quest there.
It's too much. And what it does, I think it asks too much of the player. You know, and you're always going to get people, right, that, you know, there's all different types of gamers these days, right? There's people like you and I, which could be potentially sort of a bit more time poor.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to make use of that time meaningfully. So, but if you're like, you know, you can sink 70 hours into an RPG, because generally you're following a linear-ish story that's going to take you to the end, and it's going to have a combination.
Yeah.
But when it's like Assassin's Creed, which arguably takes a similar amount of time, just the way the structure of the game works, it just becomes this quagmire where you sit there and think that you've played it for 3 hours and you haven't actually done anything. And I understand that when you're playing something like Skyrim and you're lost in all the side quests and it's all good fun and you're exploring this cave and that dungeon there, and that's brilliant. But with something like Assassin's Creed, you don't feel as though you're doing anything in that time that you're spending with the game.
No,
and
you don't.
You don't feel as though you're making any sort of real progression.
No, and like a big problem with those games too is that the side quests aren't short. You know, like Skyrim, some of them are long, but a lot of it is like, hey, take this to this place and talk to this person, and then that's it. You get those experience points. But Assassin's Creed will take you all over the map for like one side quest, and it's just that's my gaming time. You know, like, oh, how far did you get tonight? I don't know. I took a batch of flowers to Norway. You know, like it's not
not meaningful.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not meaningful. I mean, again, I haven't like put hundreds of hours into Skyrim. If I'm quite honest, I was quite bored with it, and I've just bounced off it every time. But I know people that have just absolutely loved that game. But what they've done is they've said, you know, some of the side quests themselves are almost like mini adventures, So,
Yeah.
you know, you follow that quest line long enough and you're going to get a really substantial bit of gaming just out of that, which is rewarding, which is great. And that's good design. But when I'm looking at Assassin's Creed, I'm just sitting there thinking, oh God, you know, if you put it in and you're starting it, it's kind of one of, you know, it's almost like, you know, do you know what, love? Let's put on, you know, have you ever seen the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston?
Yeah. Yep.
Like 5.5 hours,
It's
you know,
a
and you're sitting there thinking, right,
long
yeah.
movie.
Or you go back to Lord of the Rings, right? And you go, right, let's watch the extended edition trilogy today, you know. But you know,
That's the
but the
afternoon.
thing is, but you're going to be entertained. That's the
Mm.
thing. You're going to be entertained when you do it. But with Assassin's Creed, it's almost kind of like, oh God, I know that if I put this in, I'm not really going to get very far very quickly.
Right,
And I'm probably
yes.
going to bounce off it. And yeah, you want to like it because you can tell effort and care has gone into the game, because it has.
Yeah.
But in the same respect, it's just like, what do you want from me here? You know? So for me, and that's probably why I like, you know, I like some of the, like I said, I like JRPGs because they're not, you know, it's like, right, you go to this town, you do that dungeon, you do the next bit, you do the next bit, you do the next bit. The story's always moving forward.
And even the open world stuff is like, it's
Yeah.
not huge. Like it's enough, but it's not like Skyrim big where you could like run around an
Yeah.
entire globe.
But when you look at Breath of the Wild as well, that doesn't expect anything of you from your play session other than what you want to put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's quite nice,
Yeah.
you know, and that kind of thing. So, but again, I'm going to say this, I found Breath of the Wild quite boring.
Yeah,
And
the great, great sound. Yeah, I mean, that was the first Zelda game that I like played to completion, and I think I played it mostly because I didn't have anything better to play.
yeah, see, I started on Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo back in the day,
Okay.
which is incredible. And then I did Ocarina of Time, I did Majora's Mask, I did them all. And then up to Breath of the Wild, I was just like, I finished it, but I was bored at times because here's the thing, right? And this is why I'm going to go back to Elden Ring, because Elden Ring is the game that to me is my perfect game, because that gives me the right amount of exploration. It's not trying to be anything other than what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And around every corner is something engaging, and the art design is absolutely incredible. And it could be argued that on the Switch, although Breath of the Wild is a good game, it was even potentially sort of limited by the fact that it was written for the Wii U.
Yeah.
So that in itself could have. So I'll be interested in what the next Zelda game is like. But for me, there's a density to Elden Ring, and those kind of legacy dungeons, which is just incredible, where you just don't know what's around next corner. And I always go back to it because even though I've completed it, I still feel as though there's more to just find or discover, or just, you know, have a look around.
Yeah,
because you
and
never really know.
right, and that's one of the great things about Elden Ring is it feels like the world itself is a character. There's just constantly there's something to explore, some little piece of mythology that they give you. Like you're right, it is the perfect game. It's that was kind of like I didn't play it all in one sitting, but like it is something that I went back to and I enjoyed every time I picked up the controller.
Once it was out, I couldn't stop playing it, and I knew I'd love it. And there's something about like Miyazaki's world building, you know, that makes you want to be in it. And, you know, I love Dark Souls anyway. They're great, but Bloodborne was just stupid good.
Yeah,
And I know
Bloodborne
that
was fun. That was a great game.
that was incredible. It was like, again, just all the lore, everything around it, game design, combat, all just incredible. The only thing that obviously, you know, I will just say this now, just in case they're watching it, but, you know, if you just fix the frame pacing, be fine. But even then, you know, I could live with that, and it was incredible. And even like Sekiro, just like brilliant combat, you know, and brilliant design. And it's these things that, you know, where there's some of that Miyazaki does where he just sits there and thinks, I want to make the games that I'd like to play.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that to me, if you have any game designer, anybody making a game, if they're doing that, then the game should be great. But I think the moment you get into these big publishers like your Activisions and your EAs and your Ubisofts, where it's all a little bit designed by committee, and even when I'm playing, like I said at the beginning, Jedi Fallen Order, you know, you go to your save point and you rest, and then it gives you a message that says all the enemies have reset and all that kind of thing. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
Wow. That to me comes across as actually a little bit condescending. The game's good and the gameplay loop is good, and I'm enjoying exploring the world, but there are elements of it that's sort of quite clunky. The combat's not quite perfect, and maybe it'll be better in the next game that comes out.
Yeah.
But the sum of its parts is actually something that's really enjoyable, but it still has those little elements where it's a little bit patronizing.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like watching a like a big budget film versus something that was made by an indie creator. Like you tell that there's
Yeah.
more passion put into it. Like even looking at someone like Kojima, right? Like I thought Death Stranding was like the most boring game in the world, but I also know that like no other studio probably would have allowed that game to be made.
Yeah, and I think that's the position that Kojima's in, where he can kind of want to do something and someone's going to fund it,
Yeah.
and that's in fairness, all right, but I think again, Metal Gear Solid games, when you can actually play them, are normally pretty good, but the massive bloat of story, which
Right.
yeah, I mean, I tell you what, the best MGS game was Metal Gear 3. That was amazing, because it had like incredible gameplay as well, and like there was areas of that that were just absolutely fantastic. Like there was I think it was like the third boss, which is like a sniper battle. It's like one of the best things ever.
Yeah.
So he's got these like amazing like strokes of absolute genius, but there's no one there to rein him in when it's getting a little bit out of hand.
Right. He's like, what's the Nomura, right? Who made like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy, some of the Final Fantasy games, like just the bloat to some of that story and like just the way you can't understand anything. Like he connects things in the game, but in your mind you're like, this, still doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, Kojima's like amazing, but what he really needs is somebody around him that isn't a yes person to be able to sort of question his choices at times.
He needs to be reined in.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what you do, right? It's why things should be good. But then arguably they're his games, and some people absolutely love his games, and I like some of his games. Again, I've got Death Stranding because it's on the PlayStation Plus thing, but I haven't really given it any real time.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine was like, I love Death Stranding, absolutely amazed by it. I loved it. It was brilliant. Played on the PlayStation 4 or whatever. And he was like, yeah, I'll lend you a copy. But sort of never got around to it. But it was just like, he absolutely adored it and
Yeah.
finished it. And, for some people, again, but also as well, these people, some of them are, they're telling stories. And just like with anything else, some of us will bounce off that stuff and some of us will really engage with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's well, there's a game out there for everybody. Nothing's ever going to be something that everybody enjoys, but I do appreciate that games like that are made. Like I love having options.
I'm glad, yeah, exactly. I'm glad games like that are made, not because they're necessarily always for me, but it's good that that stuff exists because it's still an art form.
Yeah, yeah, and like gaming, it gives you an opportunity to explore stories in a way that movies and books can't really do. Granted, you have like just like in the movies, you have your big franchises, your Halos, Call of Duties, and they're whatever. But it's nice to be able to like put yourself into these smaller stories.
Exactly.
What are you like your soundtracks? All right, like I know because you're musically inclined. Like, what are your favorite gaming soundtracks?
My favorite gaming music, there's two. There's Shenmue, the first one. Music for
Okay,
Shenmue 1
good
is
choice.
incredible. I've got the CD in my loft. It's incredible. And I always love the title music to Final Fantasy.
Oh, right.
No matter which game you're playing, there's that motif. And Final Fantasy 14, I think, is to me like what I would call like the best version of it because it's like full orchestral and stuff. But the melody of that, and then just everything kind of coming in, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the ones for me.
In that game, like there are certain cities where like it gives me anxiety being because the music's so fast, but there are other cities like I forget what the one in the desert, that's where I started out in that game. it's just the music is so soothing and it's calming, you know, and like I love
Yeah,
anytime I need to buy something, I go to that city
yeah,
buy it.
exactly. And then I suppose as an overall soundtrack, it would be Chrono Trigger on
Oh,
the Super Nintendo,
Chrono
because that's
Trigger is
just
amazing.
yeah, that's just unbelievable. Unbelievable game, but just unbelievable music, everything. And the guy that did the music for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was same composer.
Okay, that they do sound similar. That does that
There's
makes
definitely some areas, yeah,
yeah.
but to me that's like, I mean, I think, yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is like an amazing game anyway, but then you're like, composer is the same composer as Chrono Trigger. But yeah, Chrono Trigger's music is just stunning.
It is. I mean, there's I can't even think like maybe there's like one or two tracks that I am not a huge fan of, but for the most part,
Yeah,
everything on there is pretty solid.
yeah. I think I read a story once where the composer, like, literally the time he was like sleeping in the offices to get the stuff done on time, and like
Yeah.
gave himself an ulcer and had lots of health issues,
Oh my
like
gosh.
tried to do it. But you know, if you're ever going to be one of those people that suffers for your art, that's exactly what he did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it came out really well. Did you? So there was a story a while back about the composer of Doom. Did you read about that where he was like he was
Yeah,
told he had to like create all this music under a certain amount of time, and then like the director was telling him they weren't going to use his tracks after he already did all that work, and they ended up using it again. It sounds like a messy situation, but you
yeah, it was messy, and I think also there was some issues with the quality of like the actual soundtrack. Like, I think maybe they were selling the soundtrack and the production was just not up to scratch. There was lots of things that went on around that.
yeah,
Um, I think it's really hard to say what really sort of truly happened because we're not there. But I think it's the thing as well is that, if he's commissioned to do a certain amount of work, sometimes these composers do more than what they're asked of.
yeah,
But I think sometimes what happens is that business people are very good at taking advantage of creative people. It's probably the easiest way that I would say it.
hmm,
And a creative person usually takes a lot of pride in what they do, and if that means putting in a few extra hours or giving or over delivering or something like that, it's because they really want the person that's going to be using this to have the great end experience. This composer isn't necessarily writing the music for Bethesda or id Software, whoever's making Doom.
yeah,
This composer's writing it because he wants fans of the game to have a great time playing it and be immersed in what's going on. He wants that to link to the experience.
hmm,
And I think that, just like with any other creative industry, people take advantage of that. So whether that's really taken place, because I know there's a lot of he said, she said, that kind of thing.
right,
But I definitely read about it. But as to what's really gone on, obviously I don't know. But I remember once somebody I knew like wrote to him to get advice, and he responded very kindly and very supportively, backed with advice to help this person,
yeah.
help them with their career, if you will, in trying to get into music for games. And that was between Doom games, by the way, I think.
So so he sounds like a good dude in real life.
Well, I get the impression that he is. And the thing
Yeah,
as well is a lot of these people that go up against the big people aren't necessarily in a position to want to do that, but it's your creativity, it's your work. And
that's true.
yes, you've signed a contract for it to be used in a certain way, but if someone said we're not going to use it and then we're going to use it,
Yeah,
technically if they've paid for it, that's up to them because they pay for it,
yeah.
and that's not nice. But whether that's genuinely the case, it's hard to say.
And then you have games like Celeste. You ever play Celeste?
I can't play Celeste, it's too hard.
It is crazy hard, but it has such a beautiful soundtrack.
In fairness, I don't think those types of games, to me, like Super Meat Boy and all that kind of thing,
Mhm.
I like the idea of them, but I think they're just a little bit too tough out of the starting gate for me
Yeah.
to,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
if you're younger and more, inclined, great. But for me, I'm just like, I'm put off by it.
They are crazy difficult. And I don't know if you've ever seen there's a documentary called Indie Game, and I forget, I think that's what it's called, but it's like they chronicle the creation of Super Meat Boy, and I just like sat there watching those guys play that game over and over again.
Yeah, I think it also had didn't it have the guy that did Fez and stuff as well.
Yes. Yep.
I think I've seen it. Yeah, it was a long time ago, so my memory's fuzzy, but I think I watched at least some of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good one. Do you have a list of games that you're either playing or you intend to play this year and beyond? You got like a back catalog or a list of games coming out that you're excited about?
Are there any games I'm excited about coming out? I'm excited about it's M2 Shot Triggers, guys. It's the Donpachi Daiju. I'm excited about that coming out.
Wait, sorry, what's
Japan.
it called?
The Donpachi I think it's Daiju.
Okay.
How you pronounce it? It's M2 doing an old game, but doing a great job of it. I don't think there's too much really that I'm necessarily looking forward to.
You gonna check out the Dead Space remake at all?
Nah, I'll get it when it's cheap.
Fair.
I'm just not really, I played it the first time round.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's, I'm guessing there's going to be a few new things in there, but I'm not overly. I mean, to be honest, right, when I played the first Dead Space, it didn't scare me. There was only one
though.
Yeah, it was a great game. I mean, like visually, gameplay, it was a fantastic game. I think there was only one part that scared me. That was quite early on, where it gave me a jump scare. But other than that, it didn't really do it for me. But it was a brilliant game, and I loved playing it. To me, I suppose it was more like playing Resident Evil 4. Where it's not necessarily scary, but it's just so well done and action and brilliant.
Doing it, yeah.
So I can't be worried about that. I'm going to get God of War at some point.
I just finished it. Like it's big. It's a lot. There's a lot more to do in it, but it's good. It wraps the story up really well.
Excellent. So there'll be that to probably play at some point. Like I said, I'm playing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I probably will delve into a bit more Tales of Arise.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've still got I've got a back catalogue of absolute shame.
How many games we talking?
Well, I looked at my PS3, PS4 library, and just that is 500.
Jeez. All right.
Never mind. So I'm not going to make. I mean, some of it's arcade stuff, which is fine. But I'll look at. I'll get further into things like Persona 5 Royal and stuff like that as well. So I think I'll be dipping into stuff. But in terms of like stuff that's coming out, I haven't really seen anything that says, buy me. Or see. I mean, I'm not interested in the new Tales remaster, because unless that's 60 FPS, I'm not bothered. Otherwise, I'd potentially just have it to have it. But other than that, no, which makes me sound quite boring.
I mean, I agree. Like outside, there's Final Fantasy, the 2 Final Fantasy games coming out this year. Like I don't really have a lot on my plate that I am interested in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the new Zelda game could be really good.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll tell you what, if it comes out this year, Metroid Prime 4.
You think that's been a myth for like 5 years now? You think that's actually gonna make an appearance here?
I think it's going to happen at Christmas.
All right.
I think they're going to get the hype up for the next Zelda, because that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think whether there's E3 or not, I don't know, but there'll be a Nintendo Treehouse or something around that time, and they will show you Metroid Prime 4. The good thing about what I love about Nintendo is that they don't show you stuff necessarily too soon. I know they have with the new Breath of the Wild, but they do stuff very sort of calculated, and they usually, unless it's COVID or something gets in the way, but generally they know what's going on and when it's going to be done by.
Yeah.
If anything, I think Nintendo are very good at is being very good project managers. So I think it's in good hands with Retro Studios. They know what they're doing. They made the last Metroid Prime games.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing Nintendo will have is over them is like, this has just got to be an absolute, amazing game, which I think it will be. So for me, I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be the big Christmas release for Nintendo.
All right, everyone, you heard it here first. Colin thinks that Metroid's coming out Christmas, so we'll revisit that at a later time. But
and the emphasis being on thinks or hopes. Maybe it's just hopes. I don't know. So
It
yeah,
honestly wouldn't surprise me though if Nintendo actually has all these games finished, but they're trying to like, stifle out their releases at different points.
well, the thing for me is if Metroid Prime 4 doesn't come out this Christmas, I I think that I think there's going to be new Nintendo hardware next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be surprised if there wasn't, um, because the Switch is just getting really old,
Yeah.
and I don't need anything more actually than a Switch 2.0. That's all I'm happy with because I love the Switch. I think the Switch is incredible.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
Nintendo, just make a Switch 2.0 with an OLED screen and a beefier NVIDIA Tegra, whatever you want to do with it. I don't care. I don't need a portable PlayStation 5 or something. Of just make a really good, nicely powered. Nintendo never do that thing where it's super high spec anyway. They've never done that. It's just always been about great games. But make a machine that can run your games well and smoothly at 60 FPS, and I'm going to be happy. And I think that could be this is something that could be announced around Zelda time or just after, with again there being a spring release with Metroid Prime 4 at that time as a launch title. However,
Yeah.
failing that, I want Metroid Prime 4 for Christmas, or I want it as a launch title for the new hardware spring next year.
All right. And maybe like a sequel to Mario Odyssey or something.
Yeah, potentially. I
Been a
mean,
while.
there's not
But
going to be, yeah, but there's not going to be Mario Kart 9 anytime soon. They'll be getting those booster packs out the way, won't they?
they'll still, yeah, 2 years from now, we'll still be playing Mario Kart 8.
The thing for me though, right? And I'm sorry we're just divulging a little bit more, but
Go for it.
that you're never gonna. What can Nintendo do with Mario Kart 9? What can they do?
No, I
They've
mean,
kind of
they've,
got like the perfect game in that genre. What they're doing, it doesn't get really better than that. It just needs to. The fact that they've just released more tracks is kind of all you really need to do.
yeah.
I think what I'd like to see is new original tracks rather than remakes of older tracks, which are welcome. I'm enjoying them, but it's such a complete package. How'd you make Mario Kart 9? How'd you even do that?
I guess you can't, but I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing like a Mario Kart compilation with like pieces from older games all put together.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what they're doing, I think, at the moment with the tracks, but I just don't see how Mario Odyssey is just, it's great gameplay, it's brilliant. You just make a new adventure game, that's great. But Mario Kart 9, I'd hate to be the person making that.
How do you? Well, that was like Super Smash Brothers, right? Like
Yeah,
it was great. So how do you make another Smash Brothers game after this? Like this game had pretty
I
much
don't I don't
everything.
know if they're gonna. I think that's the thing. I don't think they're going to. I think that was the whole point, wasn't it? It was kind of like a bookend. We'll go, look, it's going to be everything you need, everything you want, all in one package, and it is.
Yeah.
See you later.
Like, yeah, right. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Like, what do you do? Is it Mega Ultimate? I mean, you can't go any farther than that. Like, maybe that's the
No,
swan song.
yeah, but I just think with Mario Kart 8, it's like in that genre, it's just the perfect game.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get any better.
It is. I coach esports at the school I work at, and like those kids, they love Mario Kart. Like I sit there and they like scream at each other over it. Like it is the perfect game.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's one of those things in it where you can't imagine what they're going to do next if
No,
they do anything.
no. I mean, maybe just leave it alone and just keep adding things onto it if the
So
moment calls for it.
if you're going to get into a world of like games as a service, which I don't always necessarily am a big fan of, because it's a lot of it is about sort of milking your client base. But if you've got something like that where you've got the core experience is so good
Yeah.
that it's just how do you improve on it, then surely that is the point where you're just getting more content.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like Halo Infinite, right? That like they're like this is going to be the platform for all the new Halo games coming out. So it's just going to be adding on to the same game, and maybe that's where we're headed. I don't know, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, I need to finish the first one though. The first one.
Right.
Little
Go
dig
back
there.
and
Yeah,
complete games. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, Colin, I appreciate you chatting with me. For 100 Reasons, what the new album comes out February 24th.
Yep.
What's happening beyond the album release?
I think at the moment we've just got a couple of shows that'll be around the time in the UK. And then just like we're playing a festival in the UK called 2000 Trees, which is incredible. We'll be doing that in the summer in July. But apart from that, you know, who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, if you guys, like I said, if you guys ever come out to the States, man, I'll be there.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, thanks for, you know, hopefully we can chat again, you know, maybe when that Metroid announcement rolls around. But
Sounds good. Sounds good. Nice one, Josh. All right, man. It was a real pleasure.
yeah, thank you. You too, man.
Thanks for having me.
That to us people that can feel things, it hurts.